Susan, how's it going?
Hi, thanks for having
Hi.
me.
Awesome. So on the Data Nerd Herd today, we have Susan Walsh. Uh,
What an honor.
Likewise, for people who don't know who you are, do you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah, so if you don't know me, I am the classification guru. Welcome to my data den. This is where all the magic happens. As you can probably tell already, I am not your average data person. I try to inject a bit of sparkle, a bit of entertainment, and a bit of fun into data because it can be dry at times. But I'm really passionate about the class of spend data classification as my background. And from that, just this whole network of people have found me, and yeah, I'm just having a ball.
Obviously, yeah. I watch your lip syncs on LinkedIn all the time
Yeah,
and other stuff. It's awesome.
if
So
you told me a year ago that I would be known for lip syncs on LinkedIn, I would have laughed. It all started during lockdown as a bit of a laugh,
uh-huh.
and it's kind of taken legs of its own.
That's all. Are there any other people who lip sync on LinkedIn that you're aware of?
There's one social media lady who does a little bit like of TikToky lip syncing,
Got it.
Jim Bev, and she's like a LinkedIn expert. But apart from that, no, nobody else has given it a go yet.
That's cool. So you've already made a niche for yourself in the LinkedIn lip syncing and
Yeah,
also,
but
yeah.
it's the weirdest thing is it actually does generate business.
Hmm.
So you'd think that people might get put off by that, but they don't. So,
Walk us through your business too. I assume you're a professional lip syncer, but also a classification guru.
yes,
Yeah.
self-appointed,
That's
but
awesome.
yeah, my business is coming up for its fourth birthday, which I can't
Congrats.
believe because I did have a first business. This is my second. My first business lasted about 7 months, but it was a shop, so it was like a physical thing with lots of overheads. So it's an absolute like privilege really to make it to 4 years and be growing as well. Things
That's
things have
awesome.
really kind of started to take off in the last year or so.
That's really cool. That's a great milestone too. 4 years. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
it doesn't feel like it at
right.
all. But then I think of everything I've done. But actually, I feel like I've packed most of that 4 years into the last 12 months.
Hmm. Was it more of a progression, like kind of a slow ramp up, or walk me through the first
Yeah.
4 years?
So when my first business collapsed, I just needed a job. So I found an ad online to go and work for a spend analytics company, just doing some data classification. And I'd never done it before, but I'd worked in large corporates. So I thought I knew what businesses were spending and took to it really quickly. But of course, while I was there, I could see that all these big companies were paying, you know, tens or hundreds of thousands of pounds for some fancy software and some sexy dashboards. And actually, the real problem and like 90% of the effort was in the actual cleansing and classification and prep of the data. But nobody seemed to really be like that was like hide that under the carpet,
Hmm.
let's, smoke and mirrors kind of thing, let's sell the software or the dashboards. And I just thought, there must be people out here there who only want the data cleansed. And after 5 years there, I wanted to move on, but because I didn't have a background in data or procurement, I didn't really know where I could go and get a job because I don't code, but I use data modeling and visualization software, so I'm kind of visually coding, I guess.
Right.
Um, so I just thought, well, you know what, I'm going to set up my business and see how it goes. And I, from the very minute that I started, I always had really great comments and positive comments about what I was doing. Like, oh, I wish I'd known you 6 months ago, or and but it took a while for the business to actually, pick up clients. Firstly, because I was an unknown. There's a lot of big players in the area, so I was kind of not really, but kind of competing with them. And then the other thing is that most people, and it's only starting to change a little bit now, like knew they had a problem, but they didn't know that I existed to go and look for me because nobody else was really doing the same thing. So it's taken all those years just to build up my brand and my presence. And, stuff like this all helps, just being able to stand out and be a bit different,
Mhm.
but still get the job done. Has really worked for me. It's not how I kind of started out, but it's
Right.
it's the road that I've ended up down. But I'm just, I'm just having so much fun. I think that makes a difference.
It makes a big difference. I find the same thing in the business that I run too, where it's, uh, I think you got to bring your personality to the game, right? And
Yeah,
then some people like it, some people don't, and that's kind of how it is, right? So, but as long I think as you're being genuine and having fun, that's what matters. Especially as you point out in the space like data, where it is dreadfully dry. And I
yeah,
think
and
unnecessarily so, right? Because people like us bring our personalities
yeah,
to it, and
yeah, yeah,
so.
yeah. I think maybe it's a kind of before it was, it's a very serious, highly intelligent area and a lot of data spaces, and so you have to act accordingly.
Mhm.
Um, and I've just come bouncing in like, but the difference, who the people that I'm trying to target are the non-data people. Like,
Mhm.
so within procurement, they're great procurement people, but they don't necessarily know how to work with data. Or it's a lot of the data quality problems come from people who are just inputting data. They're not necessarily data analysts or data scientists. They're just the receptionist, or they're in sales or marketing. They're updating a CRM. They don't really care if, the name's wrong or
Mhm.
first name's missing, or, this, so I'm trying to catch their attention, because I think the only way we're going to improve data quality, because everybody's been talking about it for decades, it doesn't seem to be getting any better. It's getting the attention of the people who are not necessarily data professionals.
That's an interesting angle. I mean, in the space I'm in, for example, right? I think it's a lot of technology companies sprouting up trying to fix data governance, data quality, whatever. But I can appreciate the angle you're taking, where you're trying to head it off mainly at the source, really. I mean, so you mentioned people inputting data, as one of the causes of dirty data, so to speak, which we'll talk about more in a bit. But um, how do you how do you convince somebody who's entering data that clean data is something they should be aware of?
So you've kind of got to hit them in the what's in it for me
Hmm.
kind of space. And the best way that I can think about doing that is helping them understand the consequences of what happens when they don't do the job properly. So, say you're setting up a new product and you forget to put some of the information in. And then your friend who's sitting down the other end of the office is spending 2 hours fixing a problem because you didn't
Mm.
put that information in. That's going to mean something to someone, especially if it's someone they know, because they're causing that person extra work. So that's the way I try and approach it. Little things like dimensions of pallets on in product information. Like if you don't put the right dimensions in, then you might have an order going out and suddenly you realize the order doesn't fit on the truck because you've worked out your pallets wrong.
Yeah.
So and then the customer's not happy, the warehouse staff are stressed out, and like one little thing that might have taken you 5 or 10 minutes causes like days of trouble. So it's little things like that. If you can kind of talk to them on that level, then I think you've got a better chance of getting them more engaged.
Hmm.
And
And,
let's be honest, for them, it's not interesting. We love
right.
it, but they don't. They don't have to. They just have to understand how important it is, really.
Hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting one too. I mean, I've attempted similar things talking to people who are inputting data. Maybe that's an accounting clerk or somebody
Yeah.
in whatever department, right? And it's like, well, if you could just make sure you input this better, that'd be great. And like, yeah, that's cool. Totally don't care. I mean, how do you incentivize somebody though? I mean, you got to make them obviously understand the impact of it. But are
Well,
there?
so you said something quite something that I hear quite a lot there, which was you've gone to them, the decision's already been made that that software's been implemented.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't been consulted at all.
Right.
And quite often, if you can get the people, the users involved in early stage, and they're involved in the buy-in of it and the the installation and all that kind of stuff, then you might have a better chance of them actually working with you to make sure it's better, it's working properly.
Mm-hmm. That's such a good point.
It's maybe a little bit kind of in an ideal world, but we've got to start somewhere.
Yeah, and it's a mistake I see quite a few technology companies make where they approach it almost from the end. If it's like, well, just, set it and forget it, right? But there's always uh, you got to get buy-in. You got to get people empowered to use these tools. Otherwise, my experience is that most of these implementations will go nowhere if you don't have buy-in from the team that's responsible for it. And the other
Team
thing is too,
data.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's a big one, and that's all. You mentioned data quality. I think it's been around for a long time, for ages. I mean, this is a known problem. I think even before computers.
Yeah. But think about it, at university, who's getting taught how to cleanse data?
Mm,
Like a really messy data set.
right.
Where is that happening? It's almost like there's just an assumption there that everybody knows how to do it.
That's a good point. I think you're
And I'm not
right.
talking like really like complex code to clean it, but just taking a spreadsheet and looking at it and understanding the data and how it sits in the spreadsheet. And, even if it's like a first name, a last name, an email, an address, and then a phone number, just, and if there's lots of columns for the addresses, just understanding that, sometimes you'll get the whole address in one cell, or it might be split over a few columns. And just understanding like the patterns and things like that. I don't think that bit is really covered off.
What would be something? Say you have a person using a spreadsheet. We'll just call it Excel because that's what everyone uses. So what are some data cleaning best practices that you could advise your average person to take if they're just coming in all like cold?
Okay, hide the columns you don't need for a start. So just work with the minimum of what you need. You should, like, if you're looking at the file, try and look at the whole file. So context is so important. Looking at one column or one cell is not going to give you the full picture. So especially in spend data classification, you could have a description that says cleaning services, but your supplier could be IBM, or they could be doing computer cleaning or desk keyboard cleaning, or you could have janitorial services, or it could be another kind of power washing cleaning services. So without the supplier name, you don't have the context to be able to classify it properly, and that's how loads of mistakes happen.
Mm.
And I'm sure that happens with like product codes and things as well. You end up with multiple versions of the same product because someone's put an O instead of a zero or something like that. And the quickest way that you can start to spot those is just by creating a pivot table. And if it was a product code, you could sort by the product code first and then the product description. And then you'd be able to see if you had duplicate codes with multiple descriptions or a single description with multiple codes. So it doesn't take a lot to get started, just to get a view of what's going on in your data. And filters. Always check your filters are off or on. That's a big one.
Do you have any horror stories?
We've all been there.
Do you have a favorite horror story with filters?
Yeah, because if you don't notice at the time as well, and then you cut and paste, and you've pasted the hidden cells, and then you go back and you realize at some point, possibly hours ago, you've been working with the wrong data. That's happened. I've had Excel crash on me. Most recently, when I set up my limited company, I got a letter from an accountant, and it had my first name, someone else's surname, someone else's business, but my postal address. So obviously what's happened is on their mailing list, a couple of columns have shifted. So, so I've seen that happen. And you know, that's not just an accident with some bad data. That's you've represented your company by sending me, you're an accountancy firm and you've sent me something that doesn't have my correct name or business.
I'm sure
How
you
can I
signed right up
trust?
for them. Yeah.
Yeah, how can I trust you to look after my numbers when you haven't done like basic checks on sending stuff out? So, and it's cost them a lot of money too, the printing, the postage,
Hmm.
the time that it's taken to get that all together, just by not having some checks in place.
Hmm.
Again, it doesn't have to be, you know, hard. Do some spot checks, cheeky wee lookup if you're comfortable. Just yeah, that extra 5-10 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, will make a huge difference.
Hmm. Yeah, no, back in the days when I'd use Excel a lot in the early 2000s, I would I'd even just do simple checks like just making sure like your aggregates were kind of bidirectional, right? So and doing simple checks on that because I think what was it? There was some stat that was like 80 or 90% of Excel reports have some sort of error in them. I think it was.
So recently in Scotland, there was a hospital that was delayed and cost millions more because somebody had, at the very start of the project, like almost 10 years previous, copied a column from one to the other with all the wrong dimensions of the air conditioning units or the pipes, the tubing and everything. And so they couldn't open the hospital because all the heights were wrong, all because somebody cut and pasted a call.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then more recently, there was TUI, I think, over here, airlines got calculated the fuel load and the thrust wrong for takeoff because every woman on the plane was calculated as a small child because I think if their name starts with a miss, wherever the program, the software was built, if you're a miss, you're a child in that country. They were trying to blame it on that, but you know, you would surely have again more checks in place to figure these things out. But yeah, so it caused like problems with takeoff and things because the plane was obviously a lot heavier than they thought it was going to be.
Hmm. I remember there's a famous book. What was it This Time Is Different was the title by Ken Rogoff, pretty big economist, and I think they're one of their key assumptions I think was wrong because somebody had an Excel error, like one of the people reviewing it or one of the students, and so when you're talking about like debt to GDP ratios and one of your key assumptions in the entire thesis is like off because of an Excel error, that's not good. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
But again, a lot of these issues, it seems like they're a lot more subtle too. Like, you got mislabeled things, but then numbers might be in the wrong columns. But what other types of data errors or issues do you come across?
I've seen supplier names spelt wrong.
Hmm.
Like IBM is IMB, like things like that. Really, like things I've had IBM in data files classed as cleaning services. You know, those things have actually happened and not been picked up by the client. Um, but I think that the thing that is most probably apparent in all of those examples is everyone's probably run scripts or formulas, but nobody's actually sat down to take time to look at the data, look at the
Hmm.
patterns, look at what things should be. And one thing I'm always talking about is the importance of maintenance and spot checking. So, you know, once you fix the data, it doesn't stay like that. You know, cut and paste errors, deletions, people have got different opinions about what things should be. Things change. And so like if you're looking at your data regularly, you'll start to know when a number, like a value, is significantly higher than it should be for that supplier or for that product or that marketing campaign. But if you're not familiar with the data, then it's going to be really hard to spot.
Interesting.
So automation formulas is great, but you have to just be close to your data as well, so that you, when you can check it, you know it's going to be right or wrong.
So it's probably like some domain expert.
Yeah,
Who
it
would
could
that
be.
be?
Yeah. So, you might have procurement experts for procurement data. It could be a finance person for financials. The sales team should be looking at their numbers and knowing if they're right or wrong. And I guess there is still a little bit of like this is my data, you can't have it. Kind of have to share it a little bit more.
It never happens. Um,
No.
yeah, it seems it's interesting. Uh, I mean, we got a few friends that also work kind of, I think, in sort of adjacent roles, right? Like Scott Taylor, the data whisperer, he works
Yeah.
in data management and stuff and master data management. And it seems like what I find fascinating is now a lot of these topics are coming back into vogue all of a sudden. Data cleaning, MDM, data governance, quality, all these things, which I think
Yeah.
for the longest time, everyone is focused so much on the technology, and then you just introduce technology and then you still have crappy data. You just have more of it actually coming at
Yeah.
faster rates. But yeah, I've been spending a lot of time recently diving into the innards of governance and data management and whatnot. And it's I would say for the longest time it's been an underrated field, but I think that's going to
Again,
be
it's
changing.
the image of it as well. It's,
Hmm.
the name governance doesn't exactly do itself any favors. And again, it's, if you're not checking your data, then you're open to fraud and things like that. That happens a lot because people just don't understand what's going on in their business.
Hmm.
It's by having the governance, by having some rules in place, then everybody is working to the same standards, and then that's just going to make it so much easier going forward.
Yeah.
And technology is great, but you have to get that data right first before it starts learning from it. And I think that the technology industry has been a bit guilty of selling this dream that just plug it in and we'll fix all your data problems.
Hmm.
And I think people are starting to wake up to the fact that you need more than that. You need a balance.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It's not one or the other. I think you need a mix.
Hmm. Yeah, I've always said that data is it's a full contact sport, right? So
Totally.
it's but yeah, it definitely seems like in the field's changing toward uh, I think paying attention to the actual data ingredients. I kind of think about what you're doing as you're like the Mary Kondo of data, for example, right? Like,
Yes, that is where my first posts of like messy clothes and tiny clothes came from.
Oh,
Because I kept
interesting.
going to networking events and telling people that I was the Marie Kondo of data,
Right.
and all the women were like, "Oh yeah, we get that," and then all the men were like, "Who's that?" So I was like, right, I need to visually show you what I do so that you understand.
Hmm.
And yeah, that's exactly what I do.
Yeah, but she also, I think, repopularized tidiness in some sense. I remember
Yeah,
watching her Netflix show and just being utterly fascinated. I don't know why either.
I'm really
It's
angry with her.
right.
She made me chuck things out that I really regret chucking out. So it didn't spark joy the day I threw it out, but then when I wanted it again, it was gone.
Hmm.
So maybe I wasn't in tune with it enough. I don't know.
Well,
But actually, one thing, I would never delete data. I always work in new columns, so I always have the original data. So that's actually another tip for Excel. If you're doing stuff, never overwrite the original data. Always create new columns.
interesting. I advocate the same thing in databases, honestly.
Yeah,
If you're doing databases, especially for analytics, like have some sort of change data capture system that captures the just the deltas of your data. Otherwise, it makes analysis almost impossible because you don't
I think
have the retention of the original records. So
Yeah, think about that mailing list that I got with the wrong names in business. If they'd had the originals there, they would have noticed it straight away.
Yep.
So
Yeah, it's interesting too because in the technology end, I mean, you have Excel, and it would be interesting. I think maybe a thought experiment would be if Excel had its own sort of I guess insert only mode, right? Where you could
yeah,
you can't update original cells, but who knows? I mean, nobody's going to do that
I
because
know
they
I
like their Excel.
struggle with Excel of trying to freeze things and it doesn't really always work. And yeah, so hiding the columns is the easiest
Yeah.
thing.
I heard an interesting thing though, a few weeks ago is I can't remember what podcast it was, but it was a data podcast and people were talking about data interfaces. And this podcast tended to lean more towards, kind of newer types of tools and technologies, like Snowflake and whatnot. But it was interesting because the visualization layer that I think people kept coming back to was Excel and the spreadsheet. The fact that
Yeah,
as much as you try and get rid of this thing, it's like the cockroach of the data industry. Like it's going to be around after there's like a nuclear war and everything. It's going to be
yeah,
like cockroaches
totally.
and Excel are like the two things that'll be in
Yeah.
existence. And
And there are some really good bits of Excel, text to columns when I'm doing addresses and things is great. And I now love the X lookup. That is just like amazing.
interesting.
Um, so I mostly work in not in Excel, but sometimes you just go back to it because it's like let's not over engineer it. If it works, then let's use it.
Oh yeah, I still use it almost every day for stuff. So
Yeah, it's always going to be there.
yeah, spreadsheets. And a lot of, I mean, back in the day, I had a lot of the keyboard commands down for Excel. Like it was pretty decent actually. I don't not to pat myself in the back, but like, good with like the analysis tool pack and everything in there and solver and all that, fun stuff. But, for simple stuff, I still use it all the time just because
Yeah,
it's like, it works. And
yeah. It might take ages to write some code or do something in another piece of software in 5 minutes in Excel. So why not use Excel?
mhm. Yeah, I think there was a bit of snobbishness, I think, with the data scientists, especially where, yeah, when it's a spreadsheet, so like it's not cool. And it's
Yeah.
not a notebook, so I can't use it. So,
Again, it's all down to the user, really. I mean, they could probably make it a bit more foolproof, but they're developing it all the time. Compared to what it was 20 years ago when I was using it, it's come a long way.
it has.
But I was working somewhere. So while I've had the business, I've done some like temp work and stuff. And I was at this organization, and this guy was about 10 years younger than me. And he was showing me what he was doing, and he was in Excel, and he was like, and you just click the X to save the file. And I was like, no, what? He's like, promise me you'll never, ever, ever do that again.
Talking about the X in like
And
the upper right
yeah.
there in
As in to
Windows.
close, the X to close, he was
Oh
using that as
wow,
the save. Yeah. I guess we've got autosave now, so it's not quite as bad. But I was like, what doing? This company also still had Windows 95 in some offices. I mean, it was high tech. But I told another lady about this, and she said, "Oh, I've got a better story for you." She was working with a really young girl, and she thought that the floppy disk to save in the corner was a washing machine.
makes sense.
It does, but doesn't it
I'm
blow
just
your
kidding.
mind that there's now like a whole generation that just don't know what floppy disks are? They didn't have to, like put the second floppy
That
disk
is a
in when
good
the
point,
file was too
actually.
big.
Yeah, huh? Yeah, I guess that's true. When's the last time you used a floppy disk?
No, probably 20 years ago.
At least, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
at least.
Yeah, my dissertation was on two because it was so big it didn't fit on one. We just don't have those problems anymore.
And even yeah, like what CD-ROMs back then or something. I think that was going to
Yeah,
take the
yeah,
place of it,
yeah.
right? But then you had to burn CDs and um,
When I was at school, they had the big floppy disks, the
mhm.
ones that were actually floppy.
Oh yeah,
Remember
yeah,
those as well.
yeah. I grew up on those.
Yeah.
You had like Pitfall and other video games and whatever else you could play on those. So
We had a ZX Spectrum, so you put the tape in
uh-huh.
to load it, and it'd be like, and yeah, you had to get off, off, I think it was off the phone, off the phone line for that as well. I can't remember now, but I
Yeah,
loved games.
those were the days.
Yeah, and modems. Remember modems?
Oh, all too well. Yeah,
Get off the
yeah.
phone! I need to use the computer.
So I mean, I had an early internet connection back. I think it was 90. Well, I'd been online even in the late 80s because friends had internet connections, like
Wow.
a few friends, right? Not all of them, like maybe like one
Yeah.
or two. But then I got my first internet connection back in 92, I think. And I had this modem, and so I'd call into bulletin board services and download stuff because that's how you did stuff. But it was also, I found the fun prank to do on neighbors was you could set your modem on redial,
Right. Yeah.
just put the number in and just leave. So it's a bit mischievous as a teenager, but yeah, that annoyed the living shit out of everybody.
Yeah.
Whatever. But yeah, the modems are fun. I want to find the sound so I can let my kids hear it and just say, this is what
Yeah,
you like to get on
because
the
it's
internet. So
really, really unique.
it is unique. It's cringy. um, Switching
Oh,
gears a bit, like talking about higher low tech stuff. You recently wrote a book.
oh yeah, that nearly killed me. Um, don't leave it to the last minute. We've already had this conversation.
Mm.
Just don't leave it to the last minute. I did it all, or majority of it, in the last month.
Oh boy.
Um, really strained my wrists and things. It was, but I gotta be honest, I didn't know that I could write that as good a book as that. I'm really pleased with it. I think it's a really good book. I think it's so different to other books that are out there because I've got analogies in there. I've got real life examples of things. I've got how tos. I've got fun. Got comedy. And so it's going to appeal to a lot of different people in a lot of different ways.
That's awesome. How many pages did you have to write in that month span?
So don't know pages, but I can tell you words.
Okay.
So I had 50,000 words to do.
Uh-huh.
Um, at the end of February, I'd done about 10,000 words. And I did about another 10,000 in the first half of March. And then I did the other 38,000 in the second half of March.
Oh, wow.
Thereabouts. Yeah, it was. But when it came, it just came. There were days when I was writing 4,000 words a day. And then there was days where I just sat and couldn't even do 500. So you kind of have to go with the days that you've got it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it was bad. Yeah. Mind you, in saying that, it was bad planning, but also a lot of the things that I was able to write about didn't happen until early this year. So, in a way, it was good to hold off. But
Right.
I really didn't want to leave it any longer because I really can't wait for the book to come out. I think there's a huge need for it. So.
What's it about?
So it is called Between the Spreadsheets: Classifying and Fixing Dirty Data.
Between the Spreadsheets, it's like the Isley Brothers song, the Between the Sheets or something. Like, got another one?
It's a bit
Biggie
cheeky.
Small one. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
That's pretty funny.
And yeah, so it's I cover off what is dirty data, how to normalize suppliers, take through the steps, everything that I do, lists of things that might help them. Then we go on to spend data classification and how to do that. And all the majority of the book is all in Excel so that anyone can pick it up and literally follow the instructions and do it, whether you've never done it before or whether you've been doing it for years. And then I've got a whole chapter on what is a taxonomy and how to build one. So I think, again, that's something that kind of people just kind of do, but I don't really know if there's any kind of formal way of doing it. So I cover all that off.
Cool.
And then what else have I got? I've got my alternatives. So I talk about Omniscope and how I classify data in Omniscope as an alternative. Then I've got my data horror stories chapter. So people very kindly on LinkedIn donated anonymous stories of data problems. So I chose a few of those stories and then talk around how I would have dealt with them. And then finally, I have my dirty data maturity model. So I've just started teasing that on LinkedIn. The first box was revealed today. So the first step of the dirty data maturity model is, of course, dirty data. And this is not aimed at your high level execs, who want to know, where on the grid we are. This is aimed at people who are working with data on a daily basis, who don't really understand that stuff. So I am talking to them in a way that it will be relatable and understandable.
Interesting. It seems like it's a one-of-a-kind book. Like, I can't think of anything that's really like this.
I did some searching when I was doing my book proposal. They wanted to know what other books were out there.
Mm-hmm.
There's very, very little at all on data classification, let alone spend data classification. It's just, there's nothing there. And maybe, there has to be other people like me out there, but I'm just shouting a bit louder about it.
Right. Now, that's an awesome place to be.
Yeah.
I mean, I could think of many cases where I would have liked to have had like just some tips on classification, taxonomy, and all that other kind of stuff, right? Because it's
Yeah.
hugely
I've got a
important.
cleansing chapter too. So that's like
Nice.
all around addresses and emails and phone numbers and things like that.
That's cool.
So there's a kind of more general kind of cleansing chapter as well. But it is that it's, people think of it as a really kind of easy task, and it is if you know what you're doing. But you have to start somewhere, and if you don't know what you're doing, then how do you know if it's right or wrong?
That's a good point.
So yeah, watch a chain of data cleansing books come out after this. I wanted to be the first in there.
It always helps. Are you going to be doing any courses around that?
I'd like to build a course. I've got a couple of courses on other people's websites, but the plan would be to have like a really intensive course,
Mm-hmm.
going in depth, taking everybody through each step and each process, and then they can learn at their leisure. Some gamification and quizzes and things, and not just. I think the difference with me is I don't just say this is how you do it. I say this is why you need to do it.
Right.
And this is the consequences. This is why you should do it now. And if you don't do it now, this is what's going to happen. So it's not just a how-to. It's a kind of full picture experience, I guess.
That's a really interesting take. Presenting the why of data cleaning and other things that you mentioned in your book. Like, where is it? Where do you think? I guess let me put it this way: like, people know that data cleaning is important, and I think a course like this is going to be popular, probably quite popular. But how do you reinforce it so people have it drilled into them that they need to do this on their jobs? Because I mean, you can even be told the why, and you still might, get back into your old habits, right?
It's that what's in it for me thing again.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I know there are some. I've hosted a couple of CDO roundtables over the last year, and I know that some companies do have like in their targets, and they are measuring data quality. And now, obviously, it depends on like what you're measuring. It's probably easier to measure like customer records and things like that, like how much of it's populated and so that seems to be working for them. I think we're a long way off that being the norm. It's again, it's you got to find that what's in it for me, for them, to get them to really want to care, I guess.
Hmm.
But then also, it's like I say, so companies will happily pay tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars for some software, but I can guarantee you that most of the effort is in the cleansing part. That's where
Hmm.
the value is, but that's seen as the least valuable piece. But that's where all the time is spent. Because it's a less tangible thing.
Hmm.
If you're looking at your bottom line or charts and graphs, you can't see the problem that is caused by dirty data unless we can't ship this out to our customer and we're going to get fined $40,000 because we're going to be late. Then it's a problem. And by then it's too late. Then you've got a real problem.
Hmm.
So there's definitely a kind of change in attitude from more further up the business, I think, is needed as well.
Yeah, walk me through that. Like, who's ultimately responsible for great data?
We all are. It's not one person's
Okay.
job or one department. We all have to take responsibility, but we need kind of custodians and guardians of it to kind of look after it and oversee it to make sure that it's ticking along and that, everyone's getting on nicely and, everyone's talking to each other. And um but yeah, we should all be thinking that it's not someone else's problem. It's all our problems.
Hmm. How would you address, something that I've seen a lot is where, like CLevels might pay lip service to data, but then they don't want to make an investment in data quality. Maybe they want to buy the cool tools and all this other
Constant,
stuff, but
I am a manual business. We do things manually. We are more accurate. We cover off more than automated programs, but yet they don't want to pay. I mean, one a project of mine could be anything from 50 to 100 plus K, and that could save you millions.
Mhm.
But do you want to invest that up front? No. Well, the people who work with the data do.
Right.
Getting the sign off from the business is another thing. And it's those intangible things. Recently I worked on a project and saved a client 6 hours a week for two of their team members, just by improving their spreadsheets. That's, imagine that over the space they've been working with those sheets for a good 6 months at least, possibly longer.
Hmm.
Imagine how much money, like that, the value of that 6 hours each week will bring, not just in terms of cost, but in terms of how much more efficient the business is going to be. And those things you rarely get measured.
Right. Those things sort of have a cascading effect too, because once you start uncovering value in one area, then it becomes hopefully becomes a habit where you start looking around and say,
Yeah,
well, what else can I take care of? So
yeah,
that's interesting.
exactly.
That's
And
really
that was the low hanging fruit stuff. Imagine what else is in there.
hmm. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of I call it data rot in a way, right? It's a lot
Yeah,
of the stuff that you don't even know is there. It's just like the stuff that's like hidden in the underside of a dumpster or something. Like, um,
yeah, you're too right.
but nobody wants to go even bother looking at it because it's just probably too
Yeah,
much work. It's too horrid.
it's going to take too long. So
Hmm.
let's just leave it and let it get worse
Right. Yeah, but those
till
costs
the
accumulate.
till the bums move in, and and there's a whole neighborhood of people just hanging around that
Hmm.
rotten stuff.
Well, it reminds me of back in my days of kind of supply chain and operations management and stuff. Like one thing that with physical factories and factory floors you'd want to do is make sure that the um, the actual working environment is spotless, right? I think the Toyota methodology called it shine, or the lean methodology. And it was
Oh yeah,
the
I did
notion
lean at
is,
uni. Yeah,
yeah, and you want to have an impeccable workplace, the appearances of one, because well, it just makes things safer for one, and you can find
yeah,
things, but two, it just elevates your mood a bit, as well as it just
makes
if
your
you
day
can
a bit easier.
but if you can set the precedent that you have a very clean, factory setting, for example, a lot of other things start happening, because it reinforces the mindset. Okay, so now we need to be cognizant of just having cleanliness in our patterns, for example, right? So it's a bit
Yeah.
subliminal, but
It's,
yeah,
no,
obviously.
you're right. Many years ago when I was at uni, I worked in a retailer, and I did like the night stocking of the homeware department. And when I first took it on, the stock room, like nobody had looked after this ever. I mean, it was just a mess. There was like things everywhere. So I started to tidy up the stock room and get all the stock out and put it on the shelves, and start to arrange it in the stock room, how, by what product group. And like the first thing that happened was that the sales started to grow like 100, 200%, because stuff that had been sitting lost in the stock room was suddenly on the shelf available to sell. And then the other thing was I started showing up the other departments because I had a nice tidy area in the stock room. So then they started to try and up their game a little bit as
Mhm.
well. So it definitely does happen.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's some same sort of confidence when you're talking about data, right? So if the data is great, I think people will want to take more advantage of it. There seems to be a reluctance, I notice, when companies knowingly have bad data, that they're just too afraid to even jump in and take advantage of their data and try and get value from it. Just because then it begs the question, well, why is the data all messed up, right? Now you got to go fix that. So therefore, you get into the cycle where nobody wants to deal with it. Therefore, you have crappy analysis or none,
Yeah.
or it's more
And
gut
they
driven.
lose trust as well. So they don't
Hmm.
trust it. And um, I've got my coat methodology, which is make sure your data has its coat on. And so with that, I say, make sure it's consistent. So, let's all spell our liters and our centimeters and our milliliters and kilometers all the same way. Or are we using abbreviations? Are we doing a space in between the number and the word? And little things like that make a huge difference. And it could be, or it could be consistency of processes, how we do things every day. And then it, needs to also be organized. So, have it by category, by division, by country, by region, so that you can then slice and dice that data whichever way you want to see it. And then it's got to be accurate as well. So and to some people I've spoken to, it's not that it has to be 100% right, but it has to be fit for purpose, and that's accurate and that's good enough for them. And then once you've got those three things, you then have trustworthy data. But without those three things, you can't have that trust. And so, yeah, people end up not using the data. And then that's even worse because, you're making decisions blindly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is happening. It's I work with large organizations,
Mhm.
and the bigger they are, the harder it is to keep on top of it. And the other problem is things like acquisitions. So you might have a great
It's a big
data
one.
set, and then you take a company on, and that's it. It's gone to shit, basically.
Hmm.
It's back to square one. So um, that causes all kinds of problems as well.
That happens a lot with acquisitions, especially. That's so true.
Yeah,
Interesting. Switching gears a bit, you're giving a TEDx talk, is that right?
I am. I can't believe it. Yes, in a week on Friday.
Oh
So
wow.
Friday the 21st of May. Yeah.
Cool.
And I'm really excited, and almost more excited at the location. So I'm a big F1 fan, and it's going to be at McLaren, its headquarters.
No
So where
way.
all the cars are built, where all the racing team are, like the engineers and things. So I'm going to be at their Thought Leadership Centre talking there, but surprisingly not about data. Data doesn't really get much of a look in it. It's about resilience.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's really
So
cool.
I applied for that because I know, I could talk about data till the cows come home, but um, I wanted to kind of push myself and talk about something different. So my talk is called "Say No to No." So there's been a number of times in my life when I've been told no by my dad or by the university, and I'm like, no, I'm not having that. I'm not taking that as a final no. I'm going to fight and do something about it. So yes, it's going to be fun and uplifting and positive, but also it's a TED talk, so a bit of sadness as well. Taking you through a journey.
Interesting. So do they have like a rubric or something for how to give a TED style talk? 'Cause I notice a lot of TED talks have a certain format to them and a certain cadence.
Yeah, I'm trying not to be that. I mean,
Okay,
I don't know if you've picked up that I kind of like to do my own thing.
not at all.
Um,
No.
so it's there is that kind of seriousness and slow, long talking,
Yeah.
and I'm just not like I can't do that. That's not me. So but I think I think it's a really good and different talk. Hopefully, it'll resonate with some people. But there's 8 of us on the day, so
Mhm.
there's a whole range of different types of resilience that people are talking about. So yeah, it should be interesting. But it's a
Interesting.
race weekend, so I won't see any of the drivers or anything exciting like that. They'll all be
Oh,
busy. Yeah, they'll be in Monaco. That's like my dream goal is to get to a Monaco Grand Prix.
uh-huh.
Be on one of those super yachts or something.
Maybe I'll set you up some tickets or something. That'd be a lot of fun. So,
Yeah, that's the goal. I've been to Silverstone, not quite as glamorous, very
uh-huh.
wet and cold and windy. But yeah, it was good.
That's pretty cool. And I guess how did you even get involved with the TEDx talks to begin with?
An email came into my inbox randomly. I'd done some work with Woking Chamber of Commerce. I'd been to an event or something, and I saw it, and I thought, why not? I mean, what? When am I going to get this chance again?
Right.
Because they choose a topic, and any given year it could be something that I wouldn't be able to talk about.
Hmm.
So yeah, I put through a written proposal, and then I found out I'd got through to like the last 20 odds, and we had our first round of auditions, and then I was like told I got through to that, and then we had the final rehearsal slash auditions just at the end of April there. So yeah, it's weird though because it's all been on Zoom so far. We're going to actually be in a room like on our own, just with like the cameraman, but it's going to be it's a different environment. So I'm kind of trying to practice talking in other parts of my flat so that I'm not just familiar with talking to the webcam.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good idea. I used to do a lot of debating and speech back when I was younger, and yeah, I would say like that's the
Oh
one tip is like rehearse in uncomfortable environments, and just get your points down cold. I mean, but there's got to be a fine line between that and like improvisation because you don't want to just be like be
yeah, so
script.
so a lot of the people who were in the rehearsals were reading their notes. Like I don't have my talk written down anywhere. It's
Hmm.
all in here. I've got a couple of post-it notes, and that's it, just to guide me. And then I talk round those.
It's probably all you need, honestly. Um, you can tell when somebody's trying to force a talk. It
Yeah,
doesn't sound very genuine at all. It's like it's obviously fake and just very scripted and like
or they're like trying, memorizing it, and they're trying to think in their head, right, what's next.
hmm yeah, yeah. And
But we've all had plenty of time to rehearse now, so I guess everyone should be fine. But the thing is, so we do it on Friday
hmm
or next Friday, and it's going out live stream. But then TED have to approve it, so it still has to be good enough to get on the TEDx website or the YouTube channel. So yeah,
So for people watching this, this is a week and a half before the event. So hopefully you'll see
yeah,
it online. So
yeah. One day maybe.
One day maybe. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, it sounds like you got a really busy year so far. Anything else
It's
going on that you're doing?
oh um uh, probably trying to do a couple of speaking events later in the year. I'm also, have my business. I've got some projects on right now, and I also need to try and get some more projects in. So working on that, working on some new marketing materials, new content. Yeah, so there's plenty going on, but I know as soon as the book hits, it's going to be like boom, boom, boom. So just I'm going to try and take it easy.
Mhm.
I don't really know what that means, but I'm going to try and not overcommit in the next few months because I know it will get busy. So we'll
When's the book come
see.
out?
Hopefully mid-September,
Okay,
so not too long.
not too long at all.
Also, just bordering on the edge of Christmas time, so nice Christmas gift.
Christmas gift, good Black Friday gift, good
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
gift
yeah,
gift
yeah.
gift in general,
Yeah,
like
well, I think we're going to do a kind of pre-sale promotion, pre-launch promotion. So I will be talking about that, no doubt, on LinkedIn before that happens.
right. That's awesome. Looking forward to it. It'll definitely help
I'm
plug it. So
I'm nervous but really excited to get people's feedback and responses. So um a lot of people have read maybe a chapter.
mhm.
And I've had good feedback from the chapters that they've read. So Kate Strachney read a chapter, and
Nice.
George Firkin, he's read a chapter. And a lot of people that I'm close to that will give me honest feedback. So, and they all enjoyed it, and they also said that they could hear my voice when they were reading it, which I
Mhm.
love. That's what the one thing I really wanted to come across was me. This
Yeah.
is not sen- not not sensible, but it's not it's well, it is serious, but it's not serious at the
Right.
same time. It's tackling serious subjects and skills, but in a fun and entertaining way. So that comes across. So
That's awesome. Might have to
well, I
have you.
say that I've got to get it back from the copy editors. They might de-Susan it a little bit.
Oh,
So
right.
we'll
Yeah.
see.
It's
Yeah,
always the fun part. So,
yeah.
um, yeah, it's cool. I have to have you back on the nerd herd once the book's out.
Oh, I'd love to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll read it and
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can like roast me afterwards on it.
I'm not really a roaster per se, so more of a toaster.
Nice.
Um, or we can do a roast and toast, depending what it is. So yeah, this is awesome.
Well, Scott actually, Scott Taylor.
Uh,
I took the mick out of him when his book came out and said it would make a good coaster. So I'm sure when mine comes out,
oh shit.
he will return the favor.
Oh boy. Too much fun.
Puppet Wars. We'll start something.
Yeah, you guys should troll each other. I think this would be pretty fun. So it's like
Yeah.
WWE though, right? It's all kind of in good taste. So
Oh yeah, it's like totally like we're drinking buddies behind the scenes.
yeah, exactly. Cool. Well, awesome. I think it's probably a good place to wrap up. For people who want to find out more about you, what are the best places?
Well, the best place is LinkedIn, Susan Walsh, the classification guru. I've got the classification guru YouTube channel. So I've got lots of lip syncs amongst other things, but also some how to videos as well, and a lot of my animated explainer videos. And then finally, my website as well, theclassificationguru.com.
Awesome. Susan, it's been a lot of fun. I think we could probably
Yeah, it's
talk
been
for hours.
great.
So yeah.
Yeah,
Until next time, we'll
cool.
yeah, and good luck with the book and then the talk. I'm
Yeah,
looking forward to seeing it. So
brilliant. Thank you.
awesome. All right. Have a good
See
one.
ya.